All right, welcome everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for this explainer. Look, if you're an IT pro or a system architect dealing with enterprise environments, you're going to want to pay super close attention to this one. Today, we're diving into the ultimate fix for what's quietly become, let's be real, a total operational nightmare for IT teams everywhere: scaling Azure Virtual Desktop. If you've ever felt like your AVD deployment is running you instead of the other way around, well, what we're unpacking today is going to completely change how you think about your infrastructure. So let's just dive right in.
200. Just imagine this for a second. A massive enterprise recently realized they were running exactly 200 host pools across 2 different Azure tenants, 2 regions, and 3 availability zones. And here's the truly terrifying part of this real-world horror story. Every single one of those 200 pools was configured completely on its own. No cross-region failover automation, no unified assignment layer, nothing. They were literally duplicating the exact same configuration, totally by hand 200 times over, just to keep their AVD environment breathing. I mean, that is just a staggering amount of wasted administrative effort.
And hey, if just hearing that scenario gives you a little bit of anxiety, trust me, you are definitely not alone. As Dave Fiske over at Nerdio points out, I've been in your shoes personally, so I can totally relate. Dave hits the nail right on the head regarding a brutal scaling truth. You know, when you have 10 host pools, it's an annoyance, right? When you have 50, okay, now it's basically a full-time job for somebody. But when you scale past 150 host pools, it actually becomes mathematically impossible to keep up with the daily maintenance unless you dedicate an entire, incredibly expensive IT team strictly to pool management.
So, let's move into our first major area: why native AVD breaks down, and specifically the limitations at enterprise scale.
To figure out exactly why Microsoft's native architecture starts buckling under the weight of a massive enterprise rollout, we really have to look at a core architectural difference. Over on the left, we've got the native AVD approach, static identity binding. Basically, Microsoft treats every single host pool as an independent, totally isolated object. It relies on this static, sticky, user-to-host pool binding. What does that actually mean for you? Well, if a region has a capacity hiccup and you need to move a user, you literally have to manually reassign their entitlements. And yeah, that completely disrupts their session. Every single move is a manual click. Now contrast that with the ideal state on the right, dynamic policy routing. This is where users are intelligently pointed to the right resources, totally automatically. It's night and day.
Let's break down those day-to-day native AVD limitations just a little bit further. First up, operational silos. When you're dealing with 20, 30, maybe 50-plus host pools, you just don't have a unified view. Your admin overhead scales linearly with every single pool you add. Second, like we just touched on, that static identity binding means absolutely zero fluidity for your users. And finally, and this is the real kicker here, no native failover. If a pool, a whole region, or even a back-end service goes dark, native AVD has absolutely no built-in mechanism to automatically reroute those affected users. None. Outages stay outages until your team gets an alert, frantically logs in, and fixes them by hand. And we all know these aren't just edge cases. This is the daily reality of running AVD at scale.
Which brings us to the solution. Enter Nerdio Global Pools, a unified assignment layer.
Okay, this is where we dramatically shift gears from the headache to the cure. Global Pools is this amazing new capability in Nerdio Manager for Enterprise. Think of it as a logical aggregation layer that manages all those separate, messy pools as if they were just one single entity. But here is the absolutely crucial point: zero architectural impact. I seriously cannot overstate how huge this is for your IT teams. You do not have to rip and replace your existing infrastructure. No way. Global Pools sits entirely on top of your native AVD host pools. You just create a global pool, toss your existing pools in as members, and your users, they see the exact same published desktop or remote app workspace they have always seen. You get all the juicy management benefits without breaking your current setup.
Let's peek under the hood, shall we? Here is the 3-level architecture and exactly how Global Pools is structuring.
Let's step through this logical hierarchy together. At level 1, we have the global pool itself. This is your one addressable resource and your one single entry entitlement that enforces settings across everything sitting below it. Then, at level 2, we have the pool groups. You can think of these as collections of host pools that share common traits. Maybe it's a specific region, a subscription, or a master image. For example, you could have a pool group for East US and another for West Europe that acts as a failover. Finally, down at level 3, we have the individual host pools. These remain your standard, everyday AVD objects. So when a user connects, Nerdio evaluates that top-level policy, checks the mid-level pool group, and flawlessly routes the user to the perfect individual pool at the bottom. Completely hands-off, no manual intervention whatsoever.
Moving right along to policy-based automation. This is all about moving from manual, tedious tasks to being completely policy-driven.
Guys, this is where the massive operational shift really happens. You are finally stepping away from that static, per-pull, click-ops madness and moving toward rules that you define exactly once. Let me show you how this dynamic policy routing actually plays out in the real world using user context assignment. Say you've got an employee in the HR department. Based purely on their intragroup, the policy automatically and flawlessly drops them right into the EU pool for compliance reasons. Meanwhile, you've got a field staff member out on the road, identified by a specific Azure tag. Boom! They're automatically routed to the lowest latency regional pool available to them. Nerdio handles exactly where everyone lands based on the rules you set up. Zero manual shuffling required. It's a total game changer.
And check this out, this framework also brilliantly solves one of the biggest headaches in desktop virtualization: scheduled staged image rollouts. Let's say you've got a brand new master image ready to go. Using global pools, you can actually define a rollout by date and by percentage. You basically just tell the system, hey, automatically migrate 10% of my users to the new image on Monday so we can validate it. And once it's validated, the system just automatically rolls out the remaining 90% of users on Thursday. Again, zero manual reassignment steps. You literally just set the schedule, sit back, and the platform does the whole shebang for you.
Next up on the agenda, ending configuration drift with global pool profiles.
Because, let's be honest, once you finally solve user routing, the very next major IT headache you're going to face in a multi-pool environment is keeping all those pools perfectly consistent. Configuration drift happens so easily. You update autoscale settings on one pool, but, someone gets distracted and completely forgets to update another one during a rush deployment. Over time, your environment just devolves into utter chaos. Well, the fix here is a global pool profile. This is a layered configuration template that automatically pushes a consistent baseline to every single member pool. You set a universal baseline for your whole enterprise. But because it's layered, you can actually still override specific settings at the individual pool level where you genuinely need variation, like say changing the VM SKU for a specific region because your default size isn't available there. So you get this perfect widespread consistency, but with surgical flexibility exactly where you need it.
So let's talk about what this gets you right now. Here is your access and current status.
So just a quick update on where this stands. The Global Pools framework and group assignments shipped in private preview with Nerdio Manager for Enterprise version 8.1, with a public preview targeted for this month, July 2026. If you're out there managing large-scale AVD, you can absolutely start evaluating this right now. And really, the ultimate takeaway of this whole explainer is simply this. Make decisions once at the policy level. You no longer have to multiply your decisions and your admin clicks by the number of pools you manage. You define your distribution rules, your configuration consistency, and your failover behavior as a top-level policy, and you just let the software handle the execution.
Which leaves us with one final, kind of provocative question to wrap up our explainer today. Are you managing pools or are you managing policies? Because look, if you are out there manually managing 100 or 200 host pools individually, you are either massively over-investing in IT headcount or you're just silently accepting configuration drift and extended outages. It is absolutely time to step back, aggregate your environment, and let policy do the heavy lifting for you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer. I really hope this helps you rethink your entire infrastructure strategy. Keep learning, keep optimizing, and I will see you next time.